I could find that if the committee wanted to know.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I think going back to the utilisation point, is one of the problems that there's too much inflexibility with just one type of aircraft tending to use planes. So, for example, I was quite surprised to see one of the bases is used for the Red Arrows, who spend a lot of their time training overseas, but I didn't seem to see that much else going on in terms of flights. And I mean, perhaps we could take the GR4A Tornado, because that relates both to Norfolk but also to RAF Lossiemouth. I mean, how many Tornadoes have we got in the UK that are actually flying in service?
Could I just see if I could respond to this? Because some of the questions that you're asking about, for example, the usage of airfields are precisely for things that the RAF are concerned with in terms of how the RAF organises its manpower, its equipments and its contracts. The arrangement that we have between the RAF and Defence Estates is that it's the business of the RAF to organise how it organises itself and manages itself efficiently across the different sites. And the questions about where aircraft are and where it's sensible to put the Red Arrows will be to do with the tasking that they perform, the sunk costs and investment.
But I'm making a separate point. It's not for me to do.
These decisions are not being taken by Defence Estates.
It's a separate point that I'm trying to make, which is that, first of all, there seems inflexibility in terms of which flights are used in particular airports. Some fields seem to have very low usage. And of course the RAF will want as many airfields as possible. I mean, that stands to reason. Could I take it to a slightly different area then?
Could I just correct you there? It isn't in the interests actually of the RAF to have as many sites as possible, because it's very expensive for them to be distributed across a variety of sites.
Well, it's only been reduced by 800 hectares in 10 years, so they're not exactly driving this change. From Defence Estates making a recommendation for one of these sites to be closed, how long does it take before sign-off to that decision is given?
It's not a Defence Estate individual decision. It is done with the services for the closure. So we would make that point. And I suppose the nearest we would give would be Cottesmore, which would have come up recently, where that will be closed in 2013.
No, but that was, again, my question. My question was, in the commercial world, you present a paper to the board. A couple of weeks later, they make a decision. That's the way you'd expect it to work. Is it taking up to 18 months from Defence Estates making recommendations for actual sign-off to take place to those decisions? How long is it taking? Because there are a multitude, as you just referred to, of stakeholders here. We've got 3,500 members of staff at Defence Estates, usually with 2 or 3 going to each meeting, so I'm told. They then make a recommendation, so there's huge bureaucracy. They then make a recommendation. What I'm saying is, even once you get through that bureaucracy and get to the recommendation, from Defence Estates making that recommendation, how long does it take before a decision is taken?
I think it varies hugely depending on the nature. There are some small sites when we can move rapidly within a week or month. There are other sites which take longer because of what we have to re-provide or what the knock-on effects are of that closure.
Okay. How many people would be involved in the decision then, in terms of the various stakeholders that it needs to go through?
There would be a recommendation from the TLB in Defence Estates, and it would go to the Defence Board if it were a large-scale reduction.
It depends, Mr. Barclay, on what it was we're talking about. A decision to divest ourselves of an airfield would almost certainly flow from decisions about the future structure of the RAF, where flights...
But we've already heard no decisions were being taken on that.
Sorry?
No decisions were being taken on that because of the lack of NSLS.
I mean, one of the reasons for the small reduction that you've noted in these figures is actually a wider consideration, which is that against the prospect of the army returning from Germany, there is an argument for keeping some defence sites available for purposes of basing them when they return from Germany. So I think that is one factor. The other is, as has come out of the conversation, the RAF have a large stake in this, and I think the way in which our budgetary arrangements work these days, if the senior managers of the RAF, commanders, can find ways of reducing the size of their estate, it is very much in their interest to do so.
Can I just go a bit further on this, because I think